Today we're going to talk about how to create a new purchase agreement for a buyer. So we'll start off with logging into our ZipForms Plus, going to transaction, going to new, and new purchase or offer. So with this will be pretty much straightforward transaction. We'll go ahead and utilize the test buyer. Again, I have a previous video on creating listing agreement as well as setting up templates. So I already set up a templates and so forth. So 123 Main Street. And then what's a great tool is the MLS Connect. You have to have this set up previously to be able to import all this stuff. So what I usually do is cut and paste the MLS ID, and then you go find photo. Hopefully it finds it. This is a temp one, so I don't know if it's going to work, but hopefully it will. And it did. So it has the image, it has the information about the listing. What's great about the MLS Connect is it imports almost all the critical information for this transaction. So it's a vacant land, and I'm going to do vacant land purchase. So this is going to be a purchase. I created a template already. Vacant land is pretty straightforward because the purchase contract for a lot of the information on there is usually for homes. So you don't really need to do much with a vacant land transaction. It's pretty straightforward in the sense of the information. So I went ahead and put the vacant land active, and I use a template already. So I'm going to go ahead and save. I named it Test Buyer 123 Main Street, and then I went ahead and pulled the information. So the next step you want to do is, if you set up your templates right, you go to Documents, then you go to see all your pre-templated documents that I've set up. So again, I set this up way before. Some of it looks like back in 2019, but you get the idea. So we'll go ahead, remember, in a purchase of land, anything 25,000 or less, here I'll just open it up, you always have a plain language addendum for that. It's pretty much a simplified version of the purchase contract, and is just another layer of protection for disclosures and such. So this information is pretty straightforward. You don't really need to do anything with it. It's just always nice to have that added as a template. And that time and date will be auto-filled once you fill out the purchase contract. So we'll go right into the purchase contract. Again, with the purchase contract, I have my preset information with my company name. It imported all the property information, the TMK, as well as I need to put in the date. Now that date will go be put in the plain language addendum as well as the co-op agreement. Again, here's the listing information. In this situation, it's a dual agency, so I'm going to uncheck those and go NA. Just remember to do this if you have a dual agency, since the transaction is not, you're representing the buyer or seller, or even if you're dealing with another member of your office that's a dual agent as well. Anything that has to do with the same company, it will always be dual agency. So in this situation, we'll do Halo Bay Realty. And so now I've got that checked. I've got this checked. We are part of the Realtor Board Association. And we'll go down the next. So this describes the earnest deposit, when the buyer will, again, I predefined this. I like to give space for the purchase contract, for the earnest deposit, I mean. And then again, this is the date the seller needs to respond. We're gonna offer, we'll just say, since it was, I think, $399, so we'll just offer 300,000. So just keep it simple. And then since it is a dual agency, we must check dual agency. And these are additional template information that I have on my end that is required for my firm, but doesn't necessarily mean you have to put them. But again, if you're working for the company, you will have your own disclosures. Again, I put addendum with agent, so it's not, it is part of the purchase contract, but it's not required for the seller. So if the seller agent requests it, then we give it to them. But this is just for our internal purposes. Again, this information is already filled out. It's land, so you don't need to put any of these stuff. Land again. Inclusions, this is furnishings. It's going to be a 30-day close typically for land, so that's pretty straightforward. And if they need more time, you can extend it 5 days additional. We use First American Title, just I'm comfortable with them. You can put anybody you want, but we have a relationship with them. And then, again, a lot of this is already predefined because most of the information, it's standard information. I already know what to pick. And for land, again, it's all simple information. Again, this is timelines for the buyer and the seller. Again, so this was section H. This is the financing. Now, typically with land, you don't have financing. Not that you can't. It's just most bank lenders will not finance a $4,000 lot. So just be aware that financing terms are pretty rare in our area, and that's not necessarily meaning that you can't get it. I have yet to do land transaction with financing. Again, this is just if you are gonna finance, I put NA. Anytime that you have an area that is blank on the left hand side, I typically put NA and so forth. This is disclosure information if they have disclosures, and then this is for land, which is a 30-day close, so I typically have 7 to 10 days for the buyer to cancel if they choose to without having any penalty, and they can get their funds back. And this is, again, more house-related, cleaning, pet treatment, which you don't need. So some buyers of land want it staked. You can't do a survey for home because just for raw land because there's nothing on the property. So you have to do staking for raw land. So in this situation, the seller won't pay for it and the buyer's not wanting to pay for it. So as I put NA in there, if they were, then you would check it, and then typically the seller would be requested to pay for it, but they can reject it in their counteroffer. Termite doesn't apply, and this association really doesn't apply too much we don't typically have too many association properties here. As well as this just states that the delivery free of tenants, which doesn't really apply since it's a land. There's no rental. Again, I'm sorry, a lot of it is related to home and so forth. So this is pretty much it. That's the template. You can put a special section if the buyer wants to do staking. You would put maybe buyer will pay for staking, and I would put normally K1. Again, since I have it as NA, we didn't check it. You don't need to put in if they are going to do it. You need to check it and then reiterate it that the buyer will pay for it. So that's this section of section Q. So that's it, and then we're gonna put in the buyer's information. So first buyer name, and then you can put second buyer name and such, and then when you send it to sign, they'll sign it. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Once they're ready to sign, if you have the seller information, you can go e-sign, go next. We're gonna pick the first buyer, test email.com. Remember, the principal broker always needs to be signing first, so then the first buyer will sign. If you represent the seller, you can put the seller information as well. And so the sequence of events will be I sign, or the principal broker signs, then the buyer signs, and then if you represent the seller will also sign as well. So you can go next, and then it'll pre-populate most of the information, and then at that point you can just go ahead and send it to close for them to sign it. I apologize. So here's an example. With the principal broker section, it doesn't really put it in there, so I'm going to drop it in there, and that's all you have to do. And as you can see, if you represent the seller and the buyer, it's already pre-populated there, and all you have to do is click and send it to sign. And that's pretty much it for the tutorial. Another thing I did want to mention, if a dual agency, you don't need the cooperative brokerage, but if you're representing if you're representing the buyer and someone else is representing the seller, then you need it. Then first buyer, and this is a great way to last seller. Sorry about that. And then that pre-fills all the information for the parties. Another area you can manage the parties are here. It'll have the breakdown of first buyer. You put their email address, first and last name. You can also put your title company here, seller information as well. As you can see, all the information is onto the left-hand side, so you can manipulate that. It's fairly easy. Hopefully that tutorial will help you, and good luck with the offer. Mahalo.